We're live. Dr. Paul here
Yeah.
from menspsychology.com, Men's Psychology Substack, Romantopedia Substack, Dr. Paul Dobransky Substack with the eminent Jeremy Fox from Next Level Psychology. Yet again,
Well, and Psych Fox, username
and
Psych
Psych
Fox.
Fox.
That's really where you want to find me across
On other channels, Instagram, etc. Right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
TikTok. You do TikTok as well? Oh, of
TikTok's been
course.
popping off. Yeah, TikTok,
Nice.
X, all of the above, one name. Very happy for that I was able
All
to
right,
get that
Psych
one.
Fox.
Yeah.
So
Easy,
we're
right?
doing an analysis, movie review yet again, right?
Yes.
And
Yes, we are.
this is kind of a panned movie that's recent, was in theaters, but it's already on Netflix, I believe.
It is.
Which is where I saw it.
Yes. Yes, it was, and it was also, it's liked by horror fans. It just didn't do well in the theaters.
Wow. So it's
Right.
not liked by others. I mean, I found it quite dark, but very interesting. But
Yeah.
it is horror, so zombie movie. 28 years later, the second installment, which is called The Bone Temple.
Yes.
28 years later. Yeah.
Yes.
And if you remember 28 days later, that was like the music was incredible. It's the same director, right? Danny Boyle.
It is. Yeah. He had
Yeah.
the benefit of doing it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe at the end of this, Cillian Murphy even made an appearance.
Yes, he does. So hopefully this does well enough in reviewing
Rewatching.
over, on streaming that comes to fruition.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's read a little intro to what is it. So 28 years later, The Bone Temple, just released from theaters to Netflix now, is a psychological horror focusing on the trauma, fanaticism, sounds like our times, and memory of a post-apocalyptic world. It explores the psychosis of the infected versus the delusional, manipulative leadership of cult leader Sir Jimmy, using haunting, twisting remnants of pre-apocalyptic culture like Teletubbies to create a deeply unsettling atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah.
I would add, it is haunting. If you want, I can give a little bit of the plot synopsis.
Yeah, please.
So when we did the last episode of this, which we can link to, in the write-up, 28 years later, we talked about the characters of Spike, who was a young boy on this island that was isolated from the greater Britain zombie infection. They kept it isolated with a land bridge that was heavily guarded, right? So Spike goes on a journey with his father, who he finds out is cheating on his mother. And Spike leaves the settlement and leaves a baby that he finds that's born to an infected woman, but is a human baby with that island. And he goes back across the bridge to the mainland to go seek his destiny. So it's a sort of journeyman, call to adventure. Okay. So in the end of the 28 years later, that's where it stops. And that's the beginning of this movie where Spike runs into a guy with wild blonde hair, which is a wig, I believe. I know everyone else in that group has a wig, or it might be his real hair. So Jimmy is the name of this character, and it's supposedly after Jimmy Savile, which was a very ignominious, infamous British character, famous British entertainer who was found to be a real creep. But I think that's in some deeper lore of like this Jimmy name, or it might have just been his real name. But so Spike runs into Jimmy, who is a literal Satan worshiper. And so Jimmy is who we saw in the first movie 28 years later as the small child whose father is an infected priest who says, like, this is the end of time. This is a great reckoning. And so little Jimmy sees that, goes on, thinks that his father is literally Satan, and begins this kind of death cult of Jimmys. They all answer to Jimmy, kind of like in the series the zombie series, Walking Dead, Negan's group all says, I'm Negan. It's a very weird thing about these zombie cult things where it's like taking one name. But anyway, so the
Well,
Jimmies,
because none of them have a unique identity.
right, it's all cultish. So they wear blonde
Yeah.
wigs. There's one called Jemima, who's a female Jimmy, who wears, and they make young Spike compete and kill another one of the Jimmies to earn his place. And he does it, and it creates great tension in the group. And so you see Dr. Kelson, this character played amazingly by Ralph Fiennes, obviously Voldemort and many other roles, experimenting with an infected named Samson with a cocktail of morphine at first, like sedating Samson, spending time with him, bonding with him, and convert. So you see this great juxtaposition of tenderness and healing along with this rabid, ravenous, horrific death cult that goes and takes over this bucolic, idyllic cottage where the Jimmies run rampant and torture someone horrifically. And young Spike is there with that. He's been adopted and grafted into this bad fraternity of boys and knows it's wrong, but has become embroiled in this through this charismatic leader who is offering this, we could call it a counterfeit form of fraternity or male bonding, and through this weird cult of personality, literally a cult of devil worship, of being a true believer, and the leader thinking he can hear the voice of Satan and he interprets it, and that's going to bring about a wonderful new order. And it's very interesting how even in this sort of weird devil worship cult, the mechanics are so woefully and very boringly, you could say, the banality of evil of it's still the same kind of political sort of weird interpretation of this leader saying, oh, here's what I'm hearing, and this is what it means to do. So if we want to park it there and talk about this for a minute and then keep going with the story, that's odd because I know I'm hitting you and everybody else with a lot of like, but that's what's interesting to me is it starts right out from where the last movie ended with Jimmy positioned as this really horrific
Yeah.
character. It didn't seem like he was that bad at the ending of the first movie. It struck me like, wow, Jimmy was kind of like a weird character. He saved Spike, he killed the rage virus, but then person who was attacking him, but then he set Spike up into this other sort of potential death against a fellow finger. They're called the Fingers of Jimmy, and there's always a set number of them, and you have to kill one to earn your place, like a gang.
Hmm. I was thinking of gangs, like street
Yes.
gangs, right? As
Yes.
you were talking, or cartels, things like this. Like, how do people come into these kinds of organizations and then they get trapped in it? Then they kind of adapt to it
Yes.
psychologically. Then they let their identity be part of it. Um, my way of like taking all that dramatic storyline and kind of summarizing it for myself is that there are two movies. There's 28 Years Later,
Mhm.
which came after 28 Weeks Later, and then 28 Days Later originally. So it's the first installment of 28 Years Later. And
Yeah.
then there's this 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, that completes the story. So summarizing the first 28 years later, Spike is a young boy who's intelligent and open-minded for learning, curious. And there's that land bridge from the island in the UK where they are able to cross if there's low tide and
Yeah.
then go. Basically, what was happening is there was a tradition of fathers initiating their sons by taking them hunting across the bridge to learn how to kill zombies,
Yeah.
right? Humans with the rage virus who are just gone.
Yeah.
And to be capable of doing that and not to
Yes.
stay there and not to encounter really severe enough danger that they're definitely going to die. It's literally an initiation ceremony like ancient societies or tribes had. And Spike does stunningly well. And although his father is human and has his foibles and faults and errors of judgment, including an affair, it's not like his dad was utterly evil or deluded. He had very good intentions for his son to be transformed into a man by being initiated,
Right.
right? And there's
Right.
a lot of anthropology material on this. I always wondered, why aren't girls taken out into the woods to kill a bear or face a tiger or face the frozen blizzard by themselves or a wolf? Well, some of the anthropologists talk about how males have external duties, actions to be taking in life as protector providers, as that instinct in them exists. But
Right.
females have a natural organic initiation called pregnancy. It is a natural organic initiation, which doesn't have to have purposeful preparation like to avoid dying. You need to have good health. You might get the involvement of a mother or the females of a village to teach her what it's going to be like ahead of time. But it's not an arbitrary ritualistic thing. It is nature taking its course. Now, you may agree or disagree. There's no, final answer on that. But I just find it interesting that there may be differences in what is initiation, first off, and why is it necessary for boys and girls, and how does it happen differently for boys and girls? So these two movies had females in it, and oftentimes there was a theme of pregnancy. I mean, there was
I
the
noticed.
attachment of Spike to his mom. You never lose that connection.
Right.
And then there was finding the infected pregnant woman who gave birth to a normal baby
Right.
who's then rescued. So there's a pregnancy theme in this thing. And then there is a death theme, obviously. And you'll notice women are about birth, men are about death throughout this whole movie series. And the parallel that I was going to make is that Spike is, as best as can be done, competently mentored and ushered through a boy initiation into manhood by his dad, whereas the would-be initiation by way of a similar traumatic experience of being attacked by zombies, by the infected, instead of being carefully, kindly, and with strength mentored through the experience by his father, Jimmy had his father just utterly abandon him
Yeah, he did.
and be wackadoodle about just off to the races with his religious thought brought together with these realities of a global epidemic or pandemic happening
Sure.
around him. He connected his spiritual ideas with real world events happening to make it seem like an apocalypse, but he was deluded
Right.
in his
Well,
approach. And so he abandoned his son
sure.
by being in his own cult like delusional thinking. This is the priest father we're talking about.
Right.
And then what phrase ties the two movies together? Father, why have you betrayed me?
Or
Which is
forsaken the word of
the words
Christ.
of Christ. Father, why
Mhm.
have you betrayed me? So I still haven't figured out why the words of Christ they use, I guess because the kid's father, Jimmy's father was a priest. I guess that's why they chose that. But Jimmy says at the beginning of the first movie, Father, why have you betrayed me? When his father just threw himself into the zombies, like sacrificing himself for no reason, didn't even try to fight. That's not initiating your boy
Mhm.
competently as the father,
Right. So,
right?
well,
Then he says the same thing at the very, very end of the
I'll
second
tell you
movie.
why. So
Okay, tell me.
they're setting it up where at the beginning. So the words of Christ, Father, why have thou forsaken me, is what he says on the cross. So in the first iteration, he would know that Jimmy would know that if his father's a priest, number one. So he said that literally about his father, his earthly father, who was psychotic, potentially delusional, um, and I think had maybe been infected. I think his eyes or something about him looked. And I don't know if he. I would have to go back and rewatch it, but I know from the previews, like the trailers, and I know from some of the what I remember seeing in 28 years later, Jimmy's father, the priest, looks sickly and has like red eyes at some point. I don't know if he has it as he's
This is
still
after
talking.
he this is after he throws himself into the
Okay, so
zombies,
after
and his son has to make his own way out of the
he has to
church
make his own way.
hiding. He didn't help him.
Right.
His dad
So
didn't help him.
no. So he says that why his early father forsook him. So then at the end of 28 years later, it's so unbelievably uh, we could call it the parallels there. So I didn't want to we'll just say when Jimmy's dying, he says, "Father, why have thou forsaken me?" Well, this time he means Satan because
Yeah, he's talking to
Jimmy
Satan
so he's got
that
two
time.
fathers that he feels have forsaken him. So, the movies just are so it's like one movie that's long, like Kill Bill. It's because it's such a thematic thing of Jimmy, instead of making a way that's better, he's really a tragic figure, and he would be
Yeah,
relatable, and he would be sympathetic if he hadn't become so vile. So, basically, he's kind of the masculine that goes into the overly aggressive and kill or be killed, might makes right always pathology, um, versus going the way of, never take up for yourself. I mean, there's different ways men go wrong with their view of assertiveness. And so Jimmy clearly goes the way of it's hunt or be hunted. And that's a common theme in zombie movies, honestly.
yeah,
That's not the way it's done in this movie is very good because it's a very
yeah.
stale theme of humans are the real monsters.
You're
But
right.
I wanted to throw out there the theme of psychosis runs so deep in this because Jimmy's father's probably had a psychotic disorder. Jimmy does because at the end of the movie, after Kelson doses him with antipsychotics in that cloud that he blows, which we can just get through the story linearly if people want. But Jimmy said, I can't hear him anymore, meaning he can't hear the devil, meaning that Jimmy was cured of his psychosis by Kelson. Samson was cured of the rage psychosis by Dr. Kelson. So the theme of
Yes.
of mental illness is so deep. It's very interesting.
Can I speculate, or maybe I'm just
Of course.
pulling meaning out of it?
Go for
Okay,
it.
so for years and years, I have thought a ton about the highly valuable model in behavioral health and medicine in general, the biopsychosocial model. So
Yes.
the biopsychosocial model theoretically encapsulates all possible variables causing a person's problem, at least when they come to behavioral health treatment of some sort. So the biology is that which is genetically inherited. It's biochemical. It's brain wiring.
Yeah.
If we were a computer, it would be our hardware. And I
Sure.
believe that this film series explores that in the form of, oh, it's an actual virus that's transmitted. It's a
Yeah.
transmissible infectious disease. So it's addressing but that which is biological. But then the psychological is all through this thing. And
Yeah.
the psychological of the biopsychosocial model means the software of our brains
Yeah, it does.
or our minds, essentially, the structure of our minds, and how do our minds work as opposed to the brain and brain chemistry. How do our
Yeah.
minds work? It's like software. And then finally, why do they say social? Biopsychosocial model. Social means sociology,
Yes.
but it means that which is outside our body, that which is, I think, outside our boundary. In other
Okay.
words, if we were fish, sociology is the water that we swim in, the culture that we are in, the circumstances we're in, the economics, the demographics. It isn't identical to who we are.
Okay.
And unless we have boundary gaps through which some good ideas and maybe bad ideas can creep their way into us and then be adopted by us as beliefs. So I think this film series and the motif of a zombie, when they say that, the mundane lesson is humans are the bad ones, the zombies aren't as bad as humans. I think a deeper um, uh, perspective on it, resolution on it would be, what is a belief as
Mhm.
opposed to an instinct? They aren't the same at
No, they're
all,
not.
but they're both powerful. And I think it's a metaphor for what goes on today in people hating on each other. If your political party, someone hates you for that. Your biologic sex, somebody hates you for that.
Right.
Things don't go well. Where you live, someone hates you for that. Are you red state or blue state?
Right.
Um, your nationality, your clothing, your attire, the words you use, your vernacular, people are hating you for all these things. And I think that's where the juxtaposition of the zombies who are maybe a biological representation
Mhm.
of this kind of impairment is juxtaposed against humans who still have their minds and their wits about them, who are operating under belief systems they have adopted and kept that are
Sure.
indeed powerful. I think the Jimmy versus Spike difference is that Spike keeps his internal locus of control and doesn't just suck up whatever sociology is around him until he meets Jimmy.
Mhm.
But even then, he doesn't agree and buy wholeheartedly into this weird Satan cult that Jimmy has started. He just goes along with it to survive until he can try to escape a couple times. So Spike keeps his mind about him because he examines his own beliefs according to a set of maybe moral instruction that he has had by having had his good father as an instructor.
Yeah, you think so Spike is able to sort of retain his moral fiber because of his good upbringing?
Yes.
Yeah, well, the Bible does say you raise up a child well and they won't depart from the path. So you've got Spike's upbringing and you have his mentorship from Kelson. Now, in another world, let's talk about this. In another world, Jimmy being younger, could he have, become a better person and overcome his psychosis through meeting someone like Kelson and getting
Yes.
mentorship? I would say so.
Yes.
I would
I think
say
so.
biology is not destiny. Schizophrenia is certainly a formidable illness of the mind when untreated, and depending on how long it's been untreated, I don't have to tell you that. I know our listeners are intrigued by this stuff, but you and I both know there's different levels of delusions and how much it monopolizes and hallucinations and how many people have, right? So when it's well controlled, awesome. Could have got to that point with Jimmy, but he was sort of given over to this pathology, and we don't really see his story. It starts with childhood, ends up in adulthood, but we get to see Spike's journey, but it's all linear and all within the span of however many months or at most a year. So you get to see two lads essentially grow differently, and you see the value of mentorship in
Yeah.
the life of a male.
Yeah.
So,
Jimmy even says toward the end when he after he meets Kelson, and he's this satanic cult leader, Jimmy.
mhm,
When he meets Kelson, Ray finds he after a few hours of talking together, he goes, I like you. And it's
yeah,
strange. I've never liked a person ever.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
like you. Now that's the father. He finally got a good father
yeah, he
in
did.
Ray Fiennes.
Well, and he managed to squander that because he chose well, so continuing the movie plot, I mean, we've got a band of, you know, very not so merrymakers, torturing a homestead, and you've got young Spike who asks the pregnant lady, who's the wife of someone who's just been tortured, like, "Hey, can you take me with you?" And she, kicks him or something and then flees, which I
Yeah.
mean, okay. So then, he want young Spike, aka the new Jimmy, wants to leave. He ends up getting scooped back up, keeps going, and Jemima wants to leave um, as well. So you've got,
Yeah.
I think, right? Isn't that no, no, no? Jemima's the bad, so it's someone else. See the name. It's been a hot minute. Um, Okay, Ink, her real name to be Kelly. Okay, so Kelly, there you go. So Kelly is the good girl, the girl who joins with Spike and knows like this isn't cool. Like what's happening is bad. So it's very interesting because you see after this element at the farmhouse of torture, it's suggested that the band goes to see Kelson because Spike talks about someone who lives off at the Bone Temple, and um it's very interesting. So she assumes that he is, quote, old Nick, meaning the devil. That's an old British term for him. So this band decides, with Jimmy at the forefront, Sir Jimmy Crystal, the leader, the cult leader, to go visit um, Kelson, who they think is the devil. And they arrive there, and all of the research with Samson, which I think is a good stand in for the therapeutic journey of like continuing to build rapport, because Kelson keeps giving sedatives to Samson, the alpha zombie, in quotes. In other words, the rage infected. And Samson continues to sit calmly with Kelson and even utters the word moon. And Kelson's running dangerously low on sedatives. So he knows that it's getting close to where he's going to have to cut ties somehow. So the gang gets there. Um, Essentially, Spike and Ink, or Kelly, that was a real name, the girl with the wig who's nice, decides that they're going to try to escape. They don't get to. Um, and
You know how biology somewhat influences and predetermines some of our psychology? I'm talking
right.
bluntly, I know. In the same way that hardware dictates the kind of software or quality or sophistication of software capable of running on it.
Yeah, you can't run Spotify on Windows 93.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Okay.
maybe
So
somebody's homebrewed it.
if this is true, then symbolically, I think Kelson first having used morphine to what we call snow the alpha, or to do what is called chemical. We used to call it chemical restraints. Like
Yeah,
30, 40 years ago, you would just snow a person who's violent until they stop being violent.
so you
And
would
that's what he was
sedate them
doing with the
until
morphine.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
think it's a metaphor for the traumatized, how they sometimes get into addictions
yes,
as a poor man's band aid over their trauma. Whereas once Kelson, and that's the morphine,
yes,
and even says, you're getting tolerant to this morphine. We're going to run out. So I
yes,
have to taper you down before you have a withdrawal
uh-huh,
from the
right,
morphine. We're going to run out. So then he's like, well, why don't I use what used to be called a tranquilizer and today
yes,
are called antipsychotics or neuroleptics. And it turns out rather than just snowing the alpha, it actually is so targeted in its biology that apparently the psychosis that the virus causes is
mhm,
relieved enough. The alpha can go operate in the world as if he were back to normal,
right. You're
or
seeing that.
almost
So
so.
yeah, well, what I got from it, you continue to see Kelson, who's painted in iodine. I should add that, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
a way, yeah, to to protect from the infected. It's very interesting. Um, he continues to experiment with the mixture, and you see Samson walking around during the day because he'll go walk around and explore like his normal stomping ground habitat. And he goes to the train car, and this goes to your trauma point, by the way. So he goes to that train car, which, if people who saw the first movie, that's where a lot of action happened.
Yeah.
And this time, Samson remembers, as you said, being a kid, and he remembers saying, like, I don't have a ticket on the train. And
Yeah.
he's having a very vivid sensory memory due to an environmental trigger. Aha. Just like trauma can cause flashbacks. But this time it's almost um a good flashback. It's um a way of remembering past identity, who I am. This is who I am. I'm a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I'm not a crazed monster. And so he starts to regain awareness of who he was. And it's beautiful at the end when Kelson's pat, and we'll get into that big scene that was the whole thing with all the trailers and the really, Iron Maiden stuff. But, like, it comes full circle where Samson's comforting Kelson, who's passing away, and he says, "Thank you," obviously, for bringing him back to humanity, but very interesting there, and that's a father-son at the very most at very least symbolically, at least, dynamic of, like,
Yeah.
bringing someone
Yeah.
back, like, being with someone through trauma or addiction. I'm not trying to make light of it, but when you bring up the whole chemical restraints, you bring up chemical intervention, I think someone who says, "Well, my loved one's still in there, and I'm gonna do what it takes to get to them."
Sure.
It's very much something that you could apply and layer onto the
Yeah.
Samson and Dr. Kelson dynamic for the very much so.
I love it. I mean, from a you can go deeper and deeper into this stuff. And you can speculate, of course, but the
Mhm.
speculation could lead to us learning some things.
Of course.
For example, from an epidemiologic perspective, it seemed to me by the end that what Kelson discovered, and it took 28 years to get there, is that yes, a virus is passed on. And yes, that somehow leads to this crazed rage behavior. However, the way it does it is that there is a real virus. That's why he puts high iodine on himself to protect himself from the viral
Yeah,
touching of fluids.
right.
But once in the brain, it's creating a psychosis, and it's that behavioral change caused by the virus that is the problem. It's the behavioral change
Right.
caused by the viral infection of the brain. In other words, I think by the end, it's possible that if there were a cure for humanity, and unfortunately, Kelson died before I think passing on this knowledge to anyone,
It's
but
in his
giving
trailer.
antipsychotics to all these virally infected humans, so what? They have the virus. They're going to keep passing on a virus,
Mhm.
but they're blocking the effects behaviorally of what the virus does,
Yeah, they are.
which is a psychosis.
Well, what gets me, and I know I'm getting in the weeds, and with a good movie, you don't wanna be that guy. You don't wanna be like, "Oh, it's not making sense, and I gotta say something about it." But what's interesting is the rage viral the rage virusers, whatever you wanna call them, zombies, infected, there you go, attack Samson when they perceive that he's not infected anymore and when he's sitting in the train car. Well, how'd they know? Like, did he suddenly start acting just sane enough? Is there a scent? Maybe there's a scent that fades away when the person's been treated because
Mm.
he then doesn't fit in with them, and it's like, well, if he's ever been exposed to it and he did, but it's like, oh, well, he's not snarling and gritting his teeth. It's like, well,
He would
then
still
anyone
have the
could.
virus. I mean, he still had the virus, so it's obviously not
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
virally determined tell,
Yeah.
that would cause the other zombies to attack him. I got to tell you, I'm speculating that whoever is most responsible for developing this theme and the details of the screenplay is maybe telling us a message. If you add it all up,
Mhm.
there's so much hatred going on between people of all
There
walks of
is.
life today, as we covered at the beginning. I just imagine X or Twitter as a model for that.
Okay.
And you almost can't say anything honest without half the population attacking you. If I say one thing, half the
Mhm.
population accepts it or maybe likes it even, the other half hates it. So you can't say anything truthful without
Mhm.
being hated. Okay? I'm speculating on why this movie. And there's been 30, 40 years now of a decline of any kind of fatherly involvement
True.
in boys and girls' lives through family law and divorce and many other reasons. Um, and the statement, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" I'm riffing here, but it reminds me of
Mhm.
what happens to at least boys, but also girls too, because there were
Mhm.
girls in that gang, in that cult.
Yeah, there were.
When
I was
fathers
gonna get
are
on that.
ripped out of their lives and are not there to initiate them into adulthood in the male like way, in the fatherly, masculine way, instinctual way. When
Right.
they're not part of the initiation ritual
Yeah.
where their goodness is not part of the initiation ritual. An initiation ritual just by itself is only a trauma.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Say more about that.
Well,
Good quote.
I mean, the classic motif of an initiation, let's say for a male,
Mhm.
for a boy, is the male elders of the village gather. They discuss training the boy to prepare. How do you use a bow and arrow? How do you throw a spear? Whatever it
Yeah.
is you're going to need for your initiation. The purpose of the initiation will be to benevolently deceive the boy into thinking he will die
Okay.
or could die. And that's traumatic, potentially. That's terrifying and traumatic, potentially,
Yes, it
because he
is.
doesn't know adult males are guaranteeing as best they can a safe outcome. They're hiding in the bushes. The mountain lion that is let loose or the wolf that is let loose, they are ready to kill from behind the bushes. But the young man doesn't know they're there. He thinks he's going to die. And the
Sure.
purpose of the initiation here is to guarantee that for the rest of his, and we're talking ancient um, Aboriginal tribal living here.
Right.
Um, the purpose of the initiation is to guarantee that by facing death and winning and still functioning, what else will the boy ever fear again as
Right.
a man? There's nothing worse than death as a fear.
Right. Well, so the
And so
ultimate
now he can operate in the world of men
Mhm.
in ancient times with the need to hunt, to go to war, to fight, and to survive as long as you can and,
Right.
and protect and provide for others. Right. So that's the initiation of the boy into manhood. He faces death and wins, but it was made safe throughout. Now, Jimmy has a failed, faulty initiation. It isn't even really an initiation
No.
because it's just a trauma. And
Right.
I've thought for many years that since today we don't have any kind of formal initiation rituals for boys and for men to become men, high
Call
school
of Duty lobby.
graduation. What?
Call of Duty lobbies where you get
Oh,
verbally hazed. I'm just kidding.
right.
Keep
Well,
going.
yeah.
Go.
Well, I was thinking that getting hazed or joining a frat, I think they've killed all the frats too at this point. There's nothing left to initiate boys into men to go fight and die in life, to go do the work and do the providing and protecting and procreating, by the way,
Sure.
Scott Galloway idea there. Um, and that's the problem. And that's why there is so much hatred. There need to be more Spikes in the world and less Jimmies. Because Jimmy is a crazed nut who is a cult leader as his traumatic response to not
Yes.
having a male mentor watching over his terrifying childhood experience of seeing his dad die
Right.
and surrender and give up and not save Jimmy.
Yeah. That's absolutely
It's a commentary
accurate.
on our culture.
It is. I mean, so a few things to respond to. So yes, initiation without reason or compassion is just trauma, is just hazing and a sort of hit to your feelings of safety. I mean, so Alex Garland wrote this movie, and you'll know him from that movie Warfare that came out last year that was
Oh
so
yeah.
good. He did Civil War in 2024.
Oh yeah.
He did
Yeah.
Ex Machina 12
Oh
years ago.
right.
I believe
Ex
it's
Machina. Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
great. So he's
Yeah.
done Annihilation, which I never saw. He did Dread, which I thought Dread, the 2012 Judge Dredd movie, was absolutely amazing.
Hmm.
It is not the Sylvester Stallone one, even though that one has cult
Yeah.
classic appeal, but the one with Carl Urban. Oh my gosh, we should talk about that. It's gritty, but it's very well paced, and it's anyway. So he did this movie called Men. That's a horror movie about a woman who's being like haunted or stalked by a guy, which is an interesting thing too about
Yeah.
literally about masculinity, kind of. So, but he's done a lot. He did 28 Weeks Later too, and he did obviously. Oh, wait, so 28 Days Later. So he's been with the series a while. He did that last movie and this one, so he's got a really good perspective, I think, on masculinity. So no wonder he can compose this sort of multifaceted narrative of it. I mean, we can't forget the scene with, well, unless you have more on that, but the scene with Ralph Fiennes, pretending to be the devil at the behest of
Dancing.
Spike. Yeah.
Well,
Who,
that's the initiation ritual. Wasn't that strange, exotic, beautifully choreographed, just bizarre. Like you can't take your eyes off it,
right.
you know? And
That's
and
Iron
it's
Maiden.
and isn't that what an ancient initiation would feel like to a boy? Strange, foreign, mysterious, exotic, and yet enticing in some way.
Yes.
And you can't take your eyes off it. And you're
Yes.
crossing a threshold into the unknown
Yeah.
of facing death and then being a man and being an adult. It's an unknown. What would that be like? He doesn't know. The boy does not know.
No, he doesn't. As a Christian, it's stunning that in the movie the gang of Jimmy says, they're off to see the devil. Like it's a road journey movie like The Wizard of Oz, except
Yeah,
about
to
the
see the
devil.
devil.
And then they get there and they're met with a chance at redemption. So essentially Jimmy is so consumed with his status as this mouthpiece of Satan, he meets Dr. Kelson and knows like that's probably not the devil, but he finds out, oh, he's not, because Kelson says, no, I'm not. And Jimmy says, well, I need you to pretend to be. I need you to listen to whatever I say. So, initially Kelson agrees. And this was a point where Jimmy had a crossroads. He could have said, as you've mentioned, he said, oh, I like you and I don't like anyone. Well, the charade could have ended and it could have been, well, this isn't who we're looking for. Even though he has a massive bone temple and that made him look kind of demonic, it's actually an ally in our journey. But no, Jimmy couldn't do that. He had a shot at redemption. He literally went looking for the devil, found a good hearted person, decided to make his choice, lock it in, I need you to deceive my gang and tell them you are the devil. Okay, so Dr. Kelson does that through this concert of pretending to be the devil, playing Iron Maiden, blowing hallucinogens into the Jimmy's faces from a tray or a,
Oh, right.
a, a serving bowl,
I forgot
which,
that part.
and I
Yeah.
think there's sedatives too, possibly. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I uh, said online hallucinogens, but then so then it becomes like it almost ends up where everyone can get what they want to an extent, but then Kelson sees that Spike is with the gang. Well, that's very important to the viewers and to Kelson because Spike had journeyed to meet with Kelson in our last movie, where Kelson provided very important lessons. And so Kelson is just so upset by this that he tells the Jimmies, okay, that he's the devil and that they need to crucify Jimmy. And Jimmy is not cool with that and fights back, stabs Kelson. And as Kelson's dying, Samson comes and says thank you. And it becomes a a moment of truth where Kelson decides, okay, in the stages of the lifespan development, that generativity versus stagnation, like I've given to the next generation, I've given to Spike. It was important for me to get him out of there and to get him to not be affiliated with this gang. And so, he told the Jimmies to crucify their leader, and they end up doing it. But they both end up dying, Jimmy and Kelson. But
Yeah.
Kelson was willing to make that sacrifice because of how vile he found Jimmy to be in recruiting, a young person to go to your point, very young child, for this false initiation of violence. And because Kelson can tell like what kind of gang this is, he's just kind of going along under threat from Jimmy, but that threat wears off. He doesn't even care about his own life when he sees what it's doing to a young boy to be with that gang.
Well, yeah. I mean, the one thing too, the father, the father must die
Mhm.
is the Oedipal concept.
Right. That will
Right,
complex
the
Oedipe.
boy wants to kill the father, is
Right.
the surface, meaning, surface context, but the
Mhm.
deep meaning is the father will precede the son in going into the night, going into death, and tries to prepare the son not just for death, but to defer fear of it in order to live and in order to serve. That that's the right way of going about things in the male initiation. And also there's a concept of a legacy. Males are about
Yes.
a legacy. And so in this sense, a legacy is after you're gone. It's
Right.
why we do what we do, why we build a career, or we want to leave something behind, not just
Mhm.
enjoy the fruits of our labors right now in the moment. Um,
Right.
but it's why I've always thought, if I had to summarize what is a man and what is a woman, I instead say women are about birth, including creating ideas and fostering connections and relationships. Creating. Women are, I should say, women are about creating. Men are about dying. Men are about death. We need to hunt to provide. We need to um, strive for improvement in ourselves and in our careers. And that sometimes means having a quote, killer instinct, not literally killing, but killing the competition for something where only one can win. We're going to go for it as
Mhm.
men. And it can be gentlemanly. It doesn't have to be cutthroat, but we're essentially, when we use strong boundaries and structure, we're essentially killing the desires of someone else. When we say no, I can't help you move apartments this weekend, or no, I can't meet you tonight, or no, I can't lend you that money. There's nothing wrong with having a boundary and saying no to somebody. As an adult, you have every right to say no for no reason at all. But saying
Right.
no is essentially killing the request, the dreams, desires, the request of another.
Right.
So the killer instinct doesn't literally today, in today's world, mean go kill a human. It means be able to say no, have structure, have discipline. To say no, to use a boundary is what it translates into, I think, today. And that's one thing Kelson tried to teach Jimmy. But at the end, Jimmy's on the upside down satanic cross, literal opposite of the Christ motif, saying, Father, why have you forsaken me? Meaning Satan. Why has he forsaken him? And what is forsaken here is Jimmy never allowed his twisted cult like belief systems to be kindly operated upon by the father figure and changed into a more mature, to initiate into actual authentic adult manhood. Whereas
Correct.
Spike was well on his way to adult manhood thinking before coming across Jimmy and before coming to Kelson. But this finishes off, I think, Kelson's taking the reins from Spike's father of completing the initiation of Spike.
Mhm.
Kelson takes it on. And it takes till the end of the second movie for Kelson to finish sacrificing his own self, Kelson, for Spike.
Yes.
Essentially, he sacrificed his life for Spike to live.
He did. I mean, he his life's work, you can say, I mean, there's 2 things there. There's the rage virus cure, which, depending on what we see happen with Samson, how far Samson gets and is able to interact with society and say, "Hey, come look at this bunker that
Yeah.
Kelson has been experimenting in with compounds, right, for the rage virus that could be produced and given to the infected." So Kelson leaves 2 legacies, that of his personal kindness, social legacy, and his, his legacy with the cure. The
Yeah.
cure
Yeah.
that he Yeah, it's very interesting. So, I mean, you look at the sort of therapeutic endeavor of helping someone to regulate their nervous system, to learn how to calm even rage, like anger management, like literally the most literal
Right,
anger
right.
management class with Kelson and Sampson. So, I mean, that was fascinating to watch. But there's something to all this. I mean, the role of the women and men in the movies being different. I think female initiation may start even younger. I think we do see female social initiation, and it's seen in the jockeying and the social dynamics and the ability to caretake and emotionally predict and be emotionally
Yeah.
attuned that happens from girlhood onward. And with boyhood, it's like, when are you old enough to carry a weapon? When are you old enough to be threatening? And not like, again, oh no, I froze. Okay. Again, like, not, that's very, very broadly speaking. I want to be really clear here. I'm not saying that's how things should be. It's very interesting stuff to look at. I mean, I love how Jimmy Crystal is this like evil, literally satanic televangelist type character
Yeah.
who is so addicted to his own hype. I mean, and he says why he's been forsaken by the devil. Brother, have you ever read the Bible? If you follow evil and Satan, you are likely to end up along with him in the lake of fire. So he had a very fitting end. Like, who did you think you were? How did he created his own mythos around the devil based on purely delusional stuff? Clearly not the theology, because you would know not to go
Well,
down
I think
that path.
I can't help but think that the overarching theme of this whole series is a either a finger wagging or a pleading
Mhm.
to all of society to treat boys better and give them the mentorship of men. I think it's what it's kind of begging for. Yeah, it's not finger wagging; it's begging. And no one man, no one person can be that. It's asking society itself to allow men to do what they naturally want to do, to father and mentor.
Mm.
What I wanted to say is look at the Bone Temple itself and how this cult of kids thought, oh, obviously this guy's the devil because it's a bunch of bones, right? Because
Yeah.
that's about death. And in a way, isn't the devil about darkness and death? Yes.
Right.
But Ray Fiennes isn't the devil. He's a
Mhm.
doctor. He's something else. And what it is, I think the difference is, yes, the bones are death, but it's a memorial honoring those who once lived.
Yes.
And it's a place to mourn and be sad and have grief over the loss of the prior world and its comforts and its love and its art and it's the highest state of that humans had reached. It's now in the past, at least for now. And it's
Well,
a memorial, right? So what
yeah.
I wanted to say is instead of Ray Fiennes being the devil by virtue of there being a bunch of bones he built, the bones were built out of respect for the dead, honoring of the dead. It
Yeah.
was a respect and honoring that only comes from a mature man. It only comes from a man of high character
Right.
to be able to contend with death as a mature, respectful person rather than a silly, satanic child like person. And I think that's a commentary on I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, conservative, whatever, liberal or moderate. I think the finger wagging part that I detected is this. I think it's saying if any of you out there are not using your mind and examining ideas, comparing them just neutrally at first. No judgment at first. Look at ideas that people are saying. If you're having a conversation, instead of just mindlessly, like Jimmy, retorting this BS from whatever party you're in, either party has its automatic BS that gets spewed instead of thinking.
Right.
And I think Dr. Kelson in the film is like our conscience or our observing ego, our mindfulness ability to say, wait a minute, if we're going to have a better world again and stop being zombies, We're going to have to tolerate differences, tolerate disagreement, and be open to weighing and measuring even ideas we formerly disagreed with, to
Yeah.
re-examine them.
Well, in the process of Samson being brought to that conclusion, right?
Yes.
Abstract of, and I want to throw in one of the cool wrinkles is you see that the infected see regular humans as scary and frightening too. And so when Samson's given sedatives and the antipsychotics later, he sees Ray Fiennes' character as more as human, and so like is not fearsome at least. And
Where do we see the zombie point of view seeing humans as scary? I don't
there's
recall that
clips.
part.
There's like a very brief moment in the movie, and I'm sure there's probably a clip out there. Um, but there's like I think there's some kind of waveform surrounding them, or some kind of aura.
Hmm.
28 years.
Jeremy, I can't help but think that that's representative of conservatives and liberals fighting or men and women fighting, that they both see the other as a threat, and yet
Mm.
that they're both human in a way.
Hey, you know what? I will say the idea that you can't communicate to somebody and that you have to fear them and only act with your limbic system is um pretty on point with a lot of the discourse we have now. So I dig that. I need to find a clip of it. It's very fascinating because it did happen. It was in one of the movies. It was
Huh.
a blink if you'll miss. It was very, very brief, but yeah. I'll look that up. We should have a clip for that sometime. Anyway, no, I think this is a very, very, very symbolically rich property. I know we're just counting down until the Odyssey comes out, and we'll have mileage for about 50 podcasts on that. But this is somewhat of an Odyssey. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely a road trip series. I do hope they make the third one. I don't know how. I mean, not the third. This is not the third movie in the series, but
Yeah.
it ends with kind of a representation of female and male everyman characters and every woman rather as well of Kelly and Spike, and they are both
Yeah.
going to seek their future, and then they're seen by Killian Murphy, and so that could then go into something else. That could become a new jump off point. That would be
Oh,
so
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I kind of assumed they're destined to get married. They're gonna marry someday.
Well,
The
nothing
boy and
like
the girl.
that as a matchmaker thing.
Yeah.
Nothing like
Yeah.
a good
I
survival of something. How
Well,
about
if that
that?
ends up being the case, that also is a further statement that I was talking to somebody this morning about this. Um, if you believe evolution is real, and one of the core tenets, if not the core tenet, Charles Darwin's survived long enough to reproduce, we have instincts, or any species has instincts of survival and of reproduction. And the creature needs to survive long enough to reproduce, or the genes will die off, and possibly the species will die off, right? So for reproduction, we need males and females to actually like each other. And you may notice the skewed biologic sex preferences more and more skewed, liberal versus conservative, where the parties in some ways are almost morphing into parties of biological sex, or at least
Mm.
gender. It kind of points that direction. It's not the entirety of it. So I think this movie is also suggesting we're done for as a species if we don't figure out how to have men and women get along, not only get along, but like each other, actually value each other. And then
Yeah.
B, how to bring the parties together, the differing opinions. I think it was a lot about beliefs, the potential twisted nature of belief systems, you taking them on whole hog and thinking that's all you are as a human is beliefs you've absorbed, as opposed to weighing, measuring, do I really want to believe this? Is there evidence for this? All it is a belief. Do I want to behave in the way this belief demands? I think the cult dynamics showed that the forcing into submission of all the cult members by the leader and
Mhm.
their fear.
Yeah.
I think it's a commentary on how we all need a spanking today. It is kind of, I think, what it means in
That's a
terms of
different kind of movie.
how we treat each other.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, so when it comes to the abstract reading of it, I mean, in the cult dynamics, the cult's only as strong as its leader, and only as so the leader's only as authoritarian as his followers are weak. Like when you have a cult built on one person knows and says everything, you have to show that you are the most competent. Now, if you have a cult, if you have a group where you have a leader, sure, who's more competent, but you have other members who have competencies in other realms. Maybe you have a leader who's best at administrative stuff or making decisions or having per- um who's perceptive, and then you have other people who work under them. Fine. Um but in a cult, like with Jimmy, he was constantly in a uh, he was constantly had a drive to show that he was the prophet who would interpret the words of the devil, and always in an angry sort of position of saying that. And whenever anything was questioned, just the anger, the narcissistic urges to reclaim um,
yeah,
that power, and making just arbitrary rules, making tons of arbitrary rules. This is how you do things. You have to do this, and you have to go, initiate on someone else. It was never enough bloodshed, and that's an interesting. They represented cult dynamics well, like that. The cult members, if they had had the sense to get so they have to get unplugged from that, right? Much like the rage virus, the cult and the rage virus is this sort of parallel thematic
yeah,
world of once you start seeing the truth, do you follow it? Samson did. I mean, and Spike did. Two S names. There you go. So
yeah,
Spike had good grounding, even for a few years, just as a child, even though his father was imperfect, like everyone's father on earth is. And so the the other members of Jimmy's crew are just portrayed apart from the Ink, aka Kelly, the nice female character. Like they're pretty one note. They're very much about the violence, and they aren't portrayed as having much personality or executive function or creativity, right? And so I think it's a real
yeah.
condemnation of spewing out lines and being a follower, a lemming, to go to your point of develop your own values, right? That's about what it is. Like a value is never fulfilled. A value is a guiding principle. You're never going to have all the honor or loyalty or creativity you
You're
can.
right, right.
But you pursue it. You pursue those things.
That just brings me back to the idea that, and I want to end with this on my end, that without a solid, mature personal boundary in which you have gone through an initiation of some sort, a very difficult time, and had some guidance, and come out on the other side more empowered and confident and competent
Mm.
in using your boundary, then all is lost otherwise. And the only way to do this is to have an internal locus of control, no matter what culture you're from or how much you like. There's a difference between liking a cultural feature a lot
Mhm.
because you like it a lot versus you obey every bit of the vernacular and beliefs and compelled behaviors of that
Yeah.
culture. There's a huge
Right.
difference between I like it and choose it because I know who I am and I have an internal locus of control versus I'm a boat floating on the sea with no oars. I have no boundaries. I have a bunch of holes in my boundary and I absorb every new cool idea that comes in as it comes in. And I change my mind just as quickly as soon as the sociologic wave leaves in a week or a year or a day.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Not good. Well, yeah, I'll agree with that and say you have to know what you're choosing and why, and style and fashion, like, having a sense of style for one thing is great, and that's beyond just fashion sense, like developing timeless style. But being in style and fashionable for its own sake when it comes to your outward appearance or what your some of your tastes, fine, that's one thing. But with your values and how you choose to live, that's no way to live. You can't develop a breadth or depth of character if you don't ever have something that you hold true. So if you are always shifting in what you care about, and that doesn't serve you. Now you can care about a lot of things and you can care about most people and the welfare of humanity, but you certainly cannot go about spending your time attacking and attempting to win people. You're not going to win anyone over by attacking. So I
Right,
think
right.
the movie shows when you start to dialogue and you start to engage in more empathy taking mentalization endeavors
Mm.
like Samson, and to use that word, and it's
Kelson and
fine.
Samson.
Yeah,
Actually,
absolutely.
Kelson was so incredibly patient with this incredibly dangerous creature right in
Yes, that
front of
struck
him.
me.
I mean, that to me, that's like a hardcore feminist, trying to chat with a manosphere man, or
Very
a
good
liberal
metaphor.
chatting with a conservative, or ultra liberal with an ultra conservative. Kelson is showing us how to be human again instead of this strange, grotesque version of being human.
Yeah. Wonderful,
Uh,
wonderfully put.
all
Alright,
right.
go see the movie, everyone, go stream it if you can handle it.
Yeah, Bone Temple. It's on Netflix, I believe. Yeah,
Memento
28
Mori.
years later.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Oh,
Jeffrey Fox.
Jeffrey Fox.
Jeremy Fox, I'm sorry. Did I say Jeffrey?
I
Oh my
think
gosh.
so.
What was I
That's
thinking of?
alright. That's fine. No, 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 I'm not looking
I
at
just, my head was on the zombie planet
you.
there.
No, you're great. One thing I
Jeffrey
would add,
Fox.
you know what? People thought that's my name before, and
Did they?
that's yes, a few times, but no, 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 and maybe it was my mic. I will say this, one last thing. The idea that skulls and memento mori are satanic is interesting because it is perspective. Like, yeah, metal culture says that, but the idea of a beautiful cemetery could be Christian. It just he didn't have the materials, finds didn't have materials to do that. So what he meant to be
Right.
beautiful to his macabre sense came off satanic to people.
Right. Right.
But the idea of redemption and life beyond death and cemeteries is very religious. So just all the iconography, having conversations with your loved ones and friends about this, I encourage everybody to go see it. So if you can handle horror, there's so much rich meaning here. So loved it.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, you can call me Dr. Pete in the future. And if
Dude.
I could keep calling you Jeffrey, can I call you Jeffrey as a joke in the future
Yeah.
until you
Well,
almost get angry?
well,
Only to the place where you almost get angry. Then
well,
I'll stop.
you gotta have Psych Fox as the tag because that doesn't require first name.
That's right,
That's
Fox.
perennial. So anyway,
Fox therapy.
that's right.
Yes.
Psych
Next
Fox
level psychology as well.
next
Awesome.
level site. Yes. All right. Good cast, everyone. Thank you
All
for
right.
being
Thank
here.
you, man. I'll talk to you again soon.
Very soon.